He fed the wounded leader, and the next day he received 5 women as a gift, white heavy check mark. The village was simple, with houses made of mud and straw, narrow winding streets, and children running freely, laughing and playing under the bright sun. Life was not easy here. Most families struggled to make ends meet. They worked in the fields, tended small gardens, or raised a few animals. Despite these hardships, Ahmed carried himself with a calm dignity that made him well respected in the village. People knew him as someone who was always ready to help, no matter how little he had. From a young age, Ahmed had learned the importance of kindness. His parents had taught him that wealth is not measured by money or possessions, but by the goodness of one's heart. Even as a child, Ahmed would share his food with hungry neighbors or give a helping hand to anyone in need. As he grew older, this compassion did not fade. It only grew stronger. He worked hard on his small farm, growing vegetables and raising a few goats, but he always made time to check on the sick, help the elderly, or assist anyone facing trouble. One morning, as Ahmed was tending to his small garden, he noticed a group of villagers hurrying down the dusty road. Their faces were pale with worry, and their voices carried urgency. Curious, Ahmed walked closer to see what had happened. A man in the crowd shouted, "There's been a battle. Many soldiers have been injured. Some are too weak to move." Ahmed's heart tightened at the news. Battles were not uncommon in these lands, but hearing that so many people were suffering always stirred something deep inside him. Without a second thought, Ahmed decided to see if he could help. He left his garden, grabbed a few supplies he had, some bread, a small pot of fresh water, and a handful of dates, and ran towards the area where the wounded were being brought. The closer he got, the more he saw the grim reality of war. Men were lying on the ground, groaning in pain, their clothes torn and blood-stained. Others were carried on makeshift stretchers, their faces pale and strained. The air was thick with dust, sweat, and fear. Ahmed noticed a man who stood out from the rest. Though badly wounded, there was something commanding in the way he held himself. Even with his injuries, the man's presence inspired respect. Ahmed learned that this man was the leader of the soldiers, a brave and wise figure who had fought valiantly in the battle. Now, however, he was weak, in pain, and desperately in need of care. Ahmed's heart went out to him. While others whispered about the leader's fate, Ahmed only thought about how he could help. He approached cautiously, kneeling beside the wounded leader. The man's breathing was shallow, and his face was pale with exhaustion and blood loss. Ahmed offered him a piece of bread. The leader's hand trembled as he tried to take it, and Ahmed gently guided it to his lips, ensuring he could eat without choking. Then he gave him water, placing the cup carefully so that the man could sip slowly. As he fed him, Ahmed spoke softly, offering words of comfort and encouragement. "You've done so much for so many people," he whispered. "Rest now, you're safe. I'll take care of you." The surrounding soldiers and villagers watched in amazement. Many had never seen a simple villager show such courage and tenderness to a wounded leader. Ahmed did not hesitate or fear danger. He did not think of reward or recognition. All that mattered to him in that moment was saving a human life. He cleaned the leader's wounds as best as he could, using clean cloths he had brought. He tended to his injuries with patience and care, making sure the man was as comfortable as possible given the situation. Night fell, and the battlefield quieted, but Ahmed did not leave. He stayed by the leader's side, keeping him warm with blankets he had borrowed from nearby villagers. He whispered stories to keep the leader conscious, recounting tales of bravery, hope, and survival. At times, he would gently adjust the man's position so that he could breathe easier, and he would check for signs of infection or worsening pain. Other villagers who passed by could not believe the devotion they were seeing. Ahmed was a humble man, but in that moment he shone brighter than anyone else around. As hours passed, Ahmed's simple acts of care began to make a difference. The leader's breathing became steadier, and a faint color returned to his face. Though he was still weak, he had hope again. Ahmed's compassion was healing more than just physical wounds. It was restoring faith and courage to a man who had given so much to others. Even when Ahmed's own body ached from standing and working tirelessly, he refused to rest until he knew the leader was stable. The villagers began to help too, inspired by Ahmed's example. They brought water, cleaned the area, and tended to other wounded soldiers. But it was Ahmed who remained the leader's constant companion, feeding him, comforting him, and ensuring he never felt alone. That night, under the soft glow of the moon, Ahmed realized that courage was not only about fighting battles, but also about showing kindness when it was most needed. He understood that true bravery came from compassion, patience, and selflessness. By the time dawn approached, the battlefield had transformed from a place of despair into a place of hope. The injured leader, though still weak, had regained enough strength to recognize the man who had saved him. He looked at Ahmed with gratitude in his eyes, a silent acknowledgement of the sacrifice and care he had received. Ahmed, ever humble, only smiled and shook his head. He did not expect praise or reward. For him, the act of helping another human being in their time of need was reward enough. That morning marked the beginning of a story that would spread far beyond the small village. Ahmed's selfless courage became the talk of neighboring towns and villages. People told stories of a simple man who, without wealth or power, saved a leader from death simply by feeding him and caring for him with a pure heart. Little did Ahmed know, this single act of kindness would change his life in ways he could never have imagined. And so, Ahmed's humble journey, defined by compassion, courage, and humanity, set the stage for what would become a legendary tale. A tale that proved that even the smallest acts of kindness can have profound and far-reaching effects. The morning after Ahmed had cared for the wounded leader, the village awoke to a sense of quiet excitement. Word of Ahmed's actions had already begun to spread. Villagers whispered in amazement about how a humble man, with no weapons, no wealth, and no rank, had bravely approached the battlefield to feed and comfort a seriously wounded leader. Many people could not believe that someone so ordinary could perform an act so extraordinary. Even the children, who often ran around playing without concern for the troubles of the world, paused to listen to the stories being told in hushed tones. Ahmed himself woke early, as he always did, not out of obligation, but out of habit. His mind was calm, yet he carried a subtle nervousness about the previous day's events. Though he had acted only out of kindness, he understood the importance of what he had done. The leader he had cared for was not just any man. He was a respected figure, one whose decisions affected the lives of many soldiers and villagers alike. Ahmed knew that this man's survival could have a significant impact on their region, their village, and even the future of countless lives. Still, Ahmed did not let thoughts of recognition or reward distract him. His only focus was the well-being of the injured leader. As the sun rose over the village, casting golden light across the dusty streets and simple homes, Ahmed prepared to visit the shelter again. He gathered fresh water, a small pot of porridge he had cooked carefully, and a bundle of dates. He walked briskly along the path, his heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and concern. He had heard that the leader was still weak, and he felt an undeniable pull to help him again. Compassion, after all, was not something Ahmed could turn off, no matter how tired he was. When Ahmed arrived at the shelter, the scene was calmer than the day before, but the atmosphere still carried the tension of recent battles. Some soldiers were beginning to stand and stretch their sore limbs, while others remained lying on stretchers, groaning softly. The wounded leader was there as well, propped up carefully with the help of attentive villagers. Though his face still bore the marks of battle, there was a faint glimmer of life returning to his eyes. Ahmed's heart lifted at the sight. Seeing someone recover, even partially, brought a deep sense of satisfaction that no praise or gift could replace. Ahmed knelt beside the leader, offering the pot of warm porridge and a cup of fresh water. He spoke softly, recounting light stories to calm the leader's mind. "Yesterday was a difficult day," Ahmed said gently, "but you are stronger than you realize. Rest now and you will feel better soon." The leader's lips curled into a small, weak smile. Though words were difficult for him, his eyes conveyed gratitude and relief. Ahmed felt a quiet joy. He knew that even the smallest acts, feeding, comforting, holding a hand, could have a profound effect on someone in need. Throughout the day, Ahmed remained by the leader's side. He cleaned the bandages, changed the soiled cloths, and applied herbal salves that he had prepared the night before. He ensured the leader was drinking enough water and eating small, nourishing portions. Though Ahmed's own body ached from continuous effort, he paid no attention to fatigue. The villagers began to notice and quietly offered their support, bringing blankets, warm water, and other small items. Ahmed accepted their help but continued to take the lead in caring for the wounded man. His dedication was extraordinary because it was driven entirely by a pure heart, not by desire for fame or reward. As the hours passed, the leader began to show more signs of improvement. His breathing became steadier, and the color in his face returned slightly. At times, Ahmed would hold the leader's hand, gently encouraging him to stay awake, reminding him that he was safe now and that others cared for him. The leader responded with faint nods, his eyes reflecting gratitude and trust. Ahmed realized that human connection, attention, and compassion could be just as important as medicine or food. The warmth of care, he saw, could heal the spirit even when the body remained weak. During a quiet moment in the afternoon, one of the soldiers approached Ahmed. "Why are you doing this?" he asked in disbelief. "You are just a simple villager. You could leave and rest, but you stay here, feeding and tending to a man who is not your family." "Why?" Ahmed smiled softly and replied, "Because it is the right thing to do. No one should suffer alone. If I can help even one person, it is worth my effort. Today it is him, tomorrow it may be someone else. We are all human. We must help each other whenever we can." The soldier nodded, clearly moved by Ahmed's sincerity. As the sun began to set, the shelter became a quieter place. The sounds of groaning and discomfort still lingered, but there was also a sense of hope and calm. Ahmed prepared a light meal for the leader, cutting soft pieces of bread and arranging a few dates nearby. He encouraged the leader to eat slowly and carefully, making sure not to strain himself. With patience and care, Ahmed ensured that each bite was taken safely. At that moment, he felt an overwhelming sense of purpose. He understood that courage was not always about fighting battles. Sometimes, it was about showing patience, empathy, and devotion in the face of suffering. That evening, Ahmed stayed late, sitting beside the leader as the night air grew cool. He shared stories of the village, of seasons changing, of children learning and playing, and of hope for the future. Though the leader could only listen quietly, the sound of human connection seemed to strengthen him. Ahmed whispered words of reassurance, telling the leader that he was not alone and that the village cared for him deeply. Each story, each gentle word helped to lift the leader's spirits. It was a simple act, yet it carried the weight of compassion and humanity. As midnight approached, Ahmed finally allowed himself a brief rest, leaning against a wall while keeping a watchful eye on the leader. The moon cast a soft glow across the shelter, illuminating the quiet faces of other wounded soldiers and villagers who had joined in the efforts. Ahmed reflected on the day's events. He realized that true strength lay not in physical power or status, but in the ability to act selflessly and with courage when someone is in need. The small gestures he had made, feeding, talking, comforting, were transforming lives, not just for the leader but for the soldiers, villagers, and even himself. By morning, the leader's condition had improved noticeably. He was able to sit up with less assistance and even managed to speak a few words of gratitude to Ahmed. Though he was still weak, his eyes now carried warmth and recognition. The villagers began to notice the change and quietly celebrated Ahmed's efforts. They saw a man who had acted out of pure kindness, whose courage was not measured in battle victories, but in the care he had shown to another human being. Ahmed himself remained humble, focusing entirely on helping the leader regain strength, without expecting any reward or acknowledgement. That day marked a turning point. Ahmed's devotion and courage were no longer just personal acts of kindness. They became an example for the entire village. Children, adults, and even passing travelers began speaking of him with admiration. They told stories of a humble man whose heart was larger than the battlefield itself, a man who had risked exhaustion, dirt, and hardship to feed and comfort a wounded leader. Ahmed's actions reminded everyone that humanity, empathy, and compassion were as powerful as any weapon, and that even ordinary individuals could create extraordinary impacts. By the end of Part 2, Ahmed had not only strengthened the leader's body, but also restored hope and faith. His actions had begun to ripple through the village, inspiring others to act with generosity and courage. Though Ahmed remained humble, he could sense the beginnings of something remarkable, a story that would travel far beyond the small village, showing the world that one act of kindness could change lives in ways unimaginable. By the third day after the battle, the village was buzzing with anticipation and curiosity. Ahmed's courage and selflessness had become the subject of every conversation. People spoke in awe about how a simple villager, with no power or wealth, had cared for a wounded leader with such devotion. Some came to the shelter to see the man for themselves, while others simply listened from afar, amazed by the story that had already begun to take on a life of its own. Children stopped their play and watched in quiet reverence, seeing a real-life example of courage and humanity in front of their eyes. Ahmed, however, remained humble and focused on the task at hand. He knew that the leader's condition was improving, but he also understood that true recovery required patience, careful attention, and emotional support. Each day, Ahmed prepared nourishing food, fresh water, and herbal remedies for the leader. He cleaned the wounds, carefully applied salves, and replaced bandages. He spoke to the leader softly, encouraging him to rest, eat, and stay positive. His words were filled with reassurance and hope, and they had a calming effect on the leader's spirit. Even when the leader could not speak much, he would respond with faint smiles, nods, or the gentle squeeze of Ahmed's hand, showing his growing trust and gratitude. On this day, the leader began to regain some strength and awareness of his surroundings. He looked around the shelter and noticed the villagers working quietly, tending to other injured soldiers. He saw Ahmed sitting nearby, quietly watching over him, ensuring he was comfortable and safe. The leader's eyes softened as he realized the magnitude of Ahmed's actions. This was not just a passing act of kindness. Ahmed had devoted hours, days, and sleepless nights to ensure his survival. The leader, a man of great wisdom and authority, was deeply moved. He understood that Ahmed's actions went far beyond duty or obligation. They were a testament to the depth of his humanity. The leader motioned for Ahmed to come closer. "Young man," he said weakly, his voice hoarse from injury, "your kindness has saved me. I can see now that courage is not only on the battlefield but also in acts of compassion like yours." Ahmed, ever humble, bowed slightly and replied, "I only did what anyone would do, sir. No one should suffer alone." "I could not leave you like that." The leader's eyes glistened with gratitude. Though words could not fully express the depth of his appreciation, he wanted Ahmed to understand that his actions would never be forgotten. Word of Ahmed's dedication reached the leaders and soldiers who were still recovering from the battle. They began to speak of him with admiration, recounting how he had fed, cared for, and comforted their commander when many others hesitated. Some soldiers admitted that they themselves had felt fear and hesitation, unsure how to help in the chaos. But Ahmed had acted without hesitation, placing the leader's life and comfort above all else. His bravery was different from that of a soldier wielding a sword. It was a quiet, steady bravery rooted in empathy and courage. As the day progressed, the leader began to regain more strength. He could sit up for longer periods and even took a few careful steps with Ahmed's assistance. Ahmed held his arm firmly, offering both support and reassurance. "Steady now," he said softly, guiding the leader across the room. The leader smiled faintly, showing a spark of life returning to his eyes. Each small achievement brought a sense of triumph, not just for the leader, but for Ahmed as well. Ahmed knew that every bit of progress was a result of patience, care, and love, the kind of strength that could not be measured by battle victories or wealth. During a quiet moment in the afternoon, the leader asked Ahmed to sit beside him. "Tell me about yourself," he said. Ahmed hesitated for a moment, unused to such attention, but then spoke humbly about his life. He shared stories of his childhood, his family, and the village. He spoke of the values he had learned: honesty, kindness, and the importance of helping others. The leader listened intently, nodding as he absorbed each word. He realized that Ahmed's strength was not only in his actions, but also in the character and integrity he carried. The leader's curiosity led him to ask more questions about the village, the people, and their daily struggles. Ahmed answered patiently, giving detailed descriptions of their simple lives. He spoke about the children running through the streets, the farmers tending to their fields, and the elders sitting in the shade, sharing wisdom. He spoke about joy, sorrow, laughter, and hardship, giving the leader a glimpse into a world that he had rarely seen up close. For the leader, these stories were refreshing. They reminded him of the value of life beyond battles, power, and strategy. As evening approached, the atmosphere in the shelter became calmer. The wounded were resting, and the villagers moved quietly, ensuring that all needs were met. Ahmed prepared a light meal for the leader, carefully arranging pieces of soft bread, a small bowl of porridge, and a few dates. He encouraged the leader to eat slowly, helping him take small, manageable bites. The leader, though weak, managed to eat with Ahmed's guidance, and each bite seemed to strengthen not only his body but also his spirit. The act of sharing food became a powerful symbol of care, trust, and connection. During the night, Ahmed remained by the leader's side, ensuring he was comfortable, warm, and safe. He whispered encouraging words, telling the leader stories of courage, hope, and resilience. He reminded him that even after the darkest battles, life could continue with purpose and joy. The leader, listening quietly, felt a renewed sense of hope. He understood that the world was not only about battles and struggles, but also about compassion, humanity, and selfless acts of kindness. Ahmed's presence reminded him of this fundamental truth, and he drew strength from it. The following morning, the leader's condition continued to improve. He could now sit upright without support for short periods and even managed to speak a few words clearly. Ahmed assisted him patiently, offering encouragement and ensuring he did not overexert himself. Villagers who had come to witness this remarkable recovery were astonished. They marveled at how a single villager, armed only with kindness and determination, had made such a difference in the life of a man who was not his family, not his friend, yet needed him desperately. At one point, the leader motioned Ahmed to stand closer. "You have not only saved my life," he said with effort, "but you have reminded me of what it means to be human. Your actions speak louder than any words, any battle, or any gift. I will never forget your courage and kindness." Ahmed, who had never sought recognition, bowed humbly. "I only did what I could, sir. Everyone deserves care and compassion when they are in need." The leader's eyes reflected deep admiration and gratitude. He realized that Ahmed's heart was rare, a heart that acted with selflessness, courage, and unwavering dedication. By the end of part 3, Ahmed had become more than just a helper or a villager. He had become a symbol of hope, humanity, and selflessness. His actions inspired those around him to reflect on their own lives, their own values, and the ways they could help others. The leader's recovery was no longer just about his own life. It had become a story of inspiration, spreading through the village and beyond. Ahmed's courage and compassion had created a ripple effect, showing that even the simplest, quietest acts could change lives profoundly. As night fell, Ahmed prepared for rest, knowing that the days ahead would still require his care and attention. Yet he felt a quiet joy, a deep satisfaction that came from knowing he had made a real difference. The leader, now slightly stronger, looked at Ahmed with trust and gratitude. They shared a silent understanding that human connection, compassion, and courage were the most powerful forces of all. Ahmed's story, though humble in its beginnings, was becoming something extraordinary, proof that kindness, courage, and selflessness could change lives and inspire generations. The day after Ahmed had helped the leader regain some strength, a surprising sense of anticipation and excitement filled the village. News had traveled quickly of Ahmed's devotion and courage. Villagers were abuzz with curiosity, many whispering to each other about what might happen next. They spoke of a humble man, a simple villager, who had risked his time, energy, and comfort to care for a wounded leader when many would have turned away. Though Ahmed remained modest and calm, he could sense that something extraordinary was about to occur. Early that morning, a messenger arrived at Ahmed's small home. The messenger wore fine clothing and carried an air of authority. In his hand was a sealed letter addressed to Ahmed. Trembling slightly, Ahmed took the letter and opened it carefully. Inside, he found a personal invitation from the leader he had cared for. The letter expressed gratitude for Ahmed's selfless actions and requested his presence at the leader's quarters to receive the leader's personal thanks. Ahmed's heart pounded with a mix of excitement and nervousness. Though he had not acted for recognition, he felt honored that the leader wanted to see him personally. Ahmed quickly prepared himself. He wore the simple clothes he usually wore, not bothering with embellishments or decorations. He walked to the shelter, his mind racing with anticipation. As he approached, he noticed the leader waiting for him. Though the man was still weak from his injuries, his eyes were bright, reflecting a mixture of gratitude and admiration. Ahmed felt a warmth in his heart as he knelt before the leader. He did not expect anything. He only hoped that the leader was recovering well and that he had been able to rest peacefully. The leader spoke first, his voice steady despite his condition. "Ahmed," he said, "your courage, patience, and compassion have saved my life. You have shown me a kind of bravery that I have never seen before, a bravery that does not rely on strength or weapons, but on the goodness of the heart. You have cared for me when many others would have turned away. For that I am deeply grateful." Ahmed, as always, remained humble. He shook his head gently and replied, "I only did what any person should do, sir. I could not let someone suffer when I could help." The leader smiled faintly, clearly moved by Ahmed's words. After a moment of silence, the leader gestured to his attendants. They stepped forward, carrying 5 women, each dressed modestly and gracefully. Ahmed froze in surprise. The leader spoke gently but firmly. "These women are skilled in household management, craftsmanship, and knowledge. They are meant to assist you, support your family, and improve your household. This is my way of honoring your extraordinary actions." Ahmed felt a mix of shock, gratitude, and disbelief. He had never imagined that his simple act of kindness would lead to such a significant reward. Ahmed accepted the gift with humility and respect. He bowed deeply, acknowledging the leader's generosity. "I am honored, sir," he said softly. "I did not expect anything, but I am grateful for your kindness." The leader nodded. "You have earned more than gifts. You have earned respect, trust, and the knowledge that your actions can inspire others. These women are not simply gifts. They are a symbol of the impact your compassion has created." Ahmed listened carefully, realizing that the leader's words carried meaning far beyond material reward. They reflected the profound value of selfless service and courage. The villagers, who had gathered outside to witness this extraordinary event, whispered among themselves in amazement. They marveled at how a humble man, with no power or influence, had gained such recognition from a respected leader. Some shook their heads in disbelief, while others smiled, inspired by Ahmed's story. Children looked on wide-eyed, learning a lesson about courage, kindness, and the power of selfless action. Ahmed, ever modest, did not seek attention or praise. He only focused on understanding how best to honor the leader's gift and the responsibilities it entailed. Over the next few hours, Ahmed spent time with the women who had been sent to assist him. He spoke with each of them respectfully, learning about their skills, knowledge, and how they could help improve his household and family life. Though the situation was unusual, Ahmed treated everyone with dignity and fairness. He understood that the true value of this gift lay not only in practical assistance, but also in the trust and recognition it represented. The women, in turn, respected Ahmed's humility, patience, and integrity. They understood that they were not simply being given to a man as a reward, but were part of a larger story of compassion, courage, and humanity. As the day went on, Ahmed reflected on how his life had changed in ways he had never expected. Just a few days earlier, he had been a simple villager, tending to his small garden and helping neighbors in quiet ways. Now, he had received recognition from a respected leader and gained support that could help him care for his family and improve the lives of those around him. Ahmed understood that these rewards were not about pride or status. They were about the acknowledgement of human decency, courage, and selflessness. He felt a deep sense of responsibility to use these blessings wisely and for the good of his family and community. The leader, observing Ahmed's humility, spoke again. "Ahmed," he said, "you have shown that true courage comes from kindness and compassion. Many people fear the battlefield, yet you faced a different kind of challenge, a challenge of the heart. You showed patience, empathy, and courage when it was most needed. Your actions are a reminder that one person, even without power or wealth, can make a tremendous difference in the world." Ahmed listened carefully, understanding that the leader's words were not only praise but also a reminder of the larger lessons he had learned. That selflessness, integrity, and courage are the true measures of a person's worth. Throughout the day, Ahmed carefully planned how to integrate the women into his household in ways that respected their dignity and skills. He considered how to organize the household, divide responsibilities, and ensure that everyone felt valued and respected. Though the situation was unique, Ahmed approached it with the same patience, thoughtfulness, and humility that had guided him in caring for the wounded leader. He understood that true leadership was not about power or control, but about fairness, respect, and understanding. As evening approached, the village began to celebrate Ahmed's courage and the leader's recognition. People brought small gifts, food, and warm wishes, not only to honor Ahmed, but also to celebrate the lessons his actions had taught them. Children gathered around to hear stories of bravery, kindness, and compassion, inspired by the example of a man who had acted selflessly when faced with someone in need. Ahmed, however, remained humble, quietly accepting the admiration while focusing on the responsibilities that lay ahead. That night, Ahmed reflected on the extraordinary events of the day. He realized that his life had been transformed, not by the material gifts he had received, but by the recognition of his courage and compassion. The women who had joined his household were a tangible representation of the trust and respect he had earned. But the true reward was the understanding that selfless acts can have profound and lasting effects. Ahmed felt a deep sense of gratitude, not only to the leader but also to life itself, for giving him the opportunity to demonstrate his values and make a meaningful difference. By the end of Part 4, Ahmed's life had entered a new chapter. He had received recognition from a powerful leader, gained support that could help his family, and inspired an entire village with his courage and humility. Yet, even in the midst of this extraordinary turn of events, Ahmed remained the same man he had always been: kind, humble, and dedicated to helping others. The reward he had received was significant, but the lessons he had learned, the value of compassion, courage, and integrity, were far more profound. Ahmed's story continued to spread, reaching neighboring villages and towns. People spoke of the humble man who had fed a wounded leader and in return had earned not only gifts but also respect, admiration, and trust. His example became a symbol of hope, reminding others that acts of kindness, no matter how small, can have extraordinary consequences. Ahmed, however, remained focused on his responsibilities, caring for his family, his household, and the community around him. He understood that true greatness was measured not by recognition or reward, but by the positive impact one could have on the lives of others. Ahmed woke early, as he had for many years, but today felt different. The events of the past few days had changed his life in ways he was only beginning to understand. He had gone from being a humble villager, tending his small garden and helping his neighbors, to being recognized by a powerful leader for his courage, compassion, and selflessness. The 5 women who had joined his household were now part of his life, each contributing their skills, knowledge, and support to help him and his family. Ahmed approached this new chapter with the same humility, patience, and thoughtfulness that had guided him throughout his life. As he moved about his home, Ahmed reflected on the journey that had brought him here. It all began with a simple act of kindness, the feeding and care of a wounded leader on the battlefield. That single act had sparked a chain of events that had forever changed his life. He realized that true courage did not always involve fighting or demonstrating physical strength. Often, it was found in quiet, selfless acts that uplifted others when they were most vulnerable. Ahmed had experienced this firsthand, and the lessons of these days had deeply influenced the way he saw the world. Throughout the morning, Ahmed worked alongside the women who had joined his household. Each of them had unique skills that contributed to the well-being of his family. One prepared nourishing meals, carefully balancing nutrition and taste to ensure everyone remained healthy. Another tended to the household's cleanliness and organization, making their home more comfortable and efficient. A third woman brought knowledge of herbs and remedies, helping Ahmed care for minor illnesses and injuries. The fourth contributed practical skills in sewing and crafts, while the fifth shared wisdom and guidance in managing daily life. Together, they worked harmoniously, and Ahmed treated each with respect, understanding that their presence was a gift not only from the leader but also from fate itself. Despite the practical support he received, Ahmed never let his humility slip. He continued to work in the fields, tend to his animals, and care for his neighbors. The villagers admired this deeply. They saw a man who had been offered wealth and assistance, yet remained grounded, committed to helping others and living a life guided by principles rather than material gain. His example inspired countless people. Children learned that courage and kindness were more valuable than strength or wealth. Adults were reminded that generosity and empathy could have far-reaching effects, and that one person's actions could create a ripple of change in an entire community. One afternoon, a messenger from the leader arrived with news. The leader wished to meet Ahmed once again to personally thank him for his extraordinary service and to witness the impact of his actions on the village and household. Ahmed felt a mixture of honor and nervousness. Though he had never sought recognition, the opportunity to meet the leader again was deeply meaningful. He prepared his home carefully, ensuring that everything was in order and that his family and the women who helped him were comfortable. When the leader arrived, he was greeted warmly, not only by Ahmed but by the entire household, which now thrived through harmony and cooperation. The leader walked through the home, observing how Ahmed had integrated the gifts he received. He saw the women working respectfully and efficiently, the household running smoothly, and Ahmed managing everything with grace and patience. The leader was deeply impressed. "Ahmed," he said, "your actions have not only saved my life but also created lasting change. You have proven that courage, compassion, and humility can transform not just a single person, but an entire community. The gift I gave you was only a small token of what you truly deserve." Ahmed bowed humbly, thanking the leader for his words, but reminded him that his actions had only been driven by a desire to help another human being in need. As the day progressed, Ahmed and the leader spoke at length about the value of kindness and the importance of serving others. The leader shared stories of battles, leadership, and the challenges he had faced in his own life. Ahmed listened attentively, learning from the leader's experiences while sharing his own humble insights about the power of empathy and selflessness. Their conversation was filled with mutual respect, a meeting of hearts and minds that transcended social status and power. The leader realized that Ahmed's strength lay not in wealth or authority, but in the quiet courage and integrity he displayed every day. News of this meeting spread quickly throughout the village and neighboring areas. People were inspired by the story of Ahmed, a man who had risen not through force or ambition, but through acts of kindness and courage. Travelers and villagers came to see Ahmed, seeking his advice, guidance, or simply to witness a man whose life exemplified values they admired. Ahmed welcomed them all, sharing his experiences and encouraging others to act with empathy and bravery in their own lives. He emphasized that anyone, regardless of status, wealth, or power, could make a meaningful difference if they approached life with compassion and courage. With time, Ahmed's household became a center of learning and support. The women who had joined him taught not only practical skills, but also lessons in patience, cooperation, and respect. Children came to learn from them, gaining knowledge and wisdom that went beyond simple survival skills. The villagers often visited, learning how acts of compassion could strengthen community bonds and improve everyday life. Ahmed's example continued to inspire countless people, showing that true greatness is measured not by wealth, power, or fame, but by the positive impact one has on others. One quiet evening, Ahmed reflected on the events that had shaped his life. He thought about the day he had first fed the wounded leader, a moment that had seemed so simple and ordinary at the time. Yet that single act had grown into something extraordinary, touching lives far beyond what he could have imagined. He realized that life often presents opportunities to act with courage and kindness, and that even small gestures can have profound consequences. Ahmed's story was a testament to the idea that goodness, humility, and selflessness are powerful forces that can inspire change and leave a lasting legacy. The leader, having fully recovered, continued to maintain a close relationship with Ahmed. He frequently visited, offering guidance, friendship, and support. Yet Ahmed remained humble, treating the leader with respect while continuing his own simple life. He focused on improving his community, supporting his family, and teaching others the lessons he had learned. That empathy, courage, and kindness are more valuable than any material gift, and that the greatest rewards come from the positive impact one has on others. As years passed, Ahmed's story became legendary in the region. Parents told their children about the humble villager who had saved a leader's life and inspired an entire village. Travelers carried tales of his courage and compassion to distant towns. Ahmed himself remained modest, continuing to live a simple life, yet the effects of his actions were immense. His household thrived, the village became stronger and more united, and countless individuals learned the value of empathy, patience, and integrity. Ahmed often sat quietly in the evening, reflecting on the journey that had transformed his life. He understood that the rewards he had received, the recognition, the support, and the assistance, were secondary to the lessons he had learned and the lives he had touched. He had discovered that true greatness comes from acting with a good heart, from offering help without expectation, and from living with humility and courage. His life had become a living example of these principles, inspiring others long after the events of that pivotal day. In the end, Ahmed's story was not just about the extraordinary gift he received or the recognition from the leader. It was about the power of one person's courage and kindness to change lives. It was about the ripple effect of selfless acts, how one moment of compassion can inspire countless others to act with empathy and bravery. It was about living with integrity, humility, and humanity. Ahmed's life, once ordinary, had become a beacon of hope, a story that would be told for generations, proving that even the simplest acts of kindness can create extraordinary outcomes. And so, Ahmed continued his journey, not seeking fame, not seeking wealth, but seeking to live a life guided by courage, empathy, and selflessness. His story became a timeless lesson, showing that anyone, no matter how humble, can make a difference, change the world around them, and inspire generations to come. The man who had fed a wounded leader and received an extraordinary gift had, in fact, gained something far greater, a life defined by meaning, compassion, and lasting impact.